No one noticed when the silence started. Pastor Bartholomew had always been quiet. His wife, Amaka, was a friendly one who often shared food with the neighbors. Their children, Ma and Favor, used to play hide and seek near the big tree. But one day, the laughter stopped. Weeks went by with no lights in the church compound and no children playing. Amaka and the kids were gone. Whenever church members asked about them, Pastor Bao only gave a small smile and said they had traveled. The neighbors waited. Day 1, day 2, day 3. They knocked on the door again. Pastor Bartholomew, is Amaka at home? He opened the door only a little. They traveled, he said, his voice quiet like a breeze behind a window. Oh, where to? Mama Chinier asked. Bartholomew gave a small, closed-mouth smile. Just to the village for some rest, he replied. He said nothing more. He closed the door quietly. But no one had seen a car leave. No one had seen suitcases. No one had seen any goodbye hugs. One day they were there, and the next they were gone. What the neighbors didn't know was that right on the floor where they prayed, beneath the shiny tiles of the altar, Amaka, Ma, and Favor were buried. Buried by the same man of God they all trusted. Bartholomew had started preaching when he was only 17. He was a tall, thin boy with long arms, dry lips, and a burning passion for God. He had no father, no mother, only a Bible and a voice that believed God was listening. Every morning, before the rooster finished crowing, Bartholomew went out barefoot. He wore no slippers or sandals. The hot sand burned his toes, but he kept walking. He always held his Bible close to his chest, like it was part of him. "Good morning, Mama Yuma," he would say as he passed her stall. "Let me pray for your legs again." The old woman would nod and smile. "God bless you, my son. Even if my legs don't move, your prayers give me hope." He would kneel beside her, touch her knees, and whisper, "Lord, help her stand." Then he would smile, say, "Amen," and walk to the next house. People liked him. They called him Brother Bartholomew, the barefoot boy preacher. He never asked for money, never begged for food, never shouted. He only prayed. But Sundays were always different. On Sundays, he wore his cleanest shirt. It was white, but old. He tucked it into his faded trousers and walked to the small plywood church beside the town boho. He swept the floor, arranged the benches, wiped the wooden pulpit, and placed a standing fan in the corner. Then he knelt down. "Lord, send them," he prayed. "Let people come today." But no one came. The sun rose higher. The heat grew stronger, and Brother Bartholomew kept preaching to empty seats. Sweat ran down his face like rain on dry ground. Sometimes a madman would wander in, sit for a while, clap, then walk out laughing at the ceiling. Still, Bartholomew never stopped. Even when the benches looked empty like rows of ghosts, even when the sound of other churches filled the air with big speakers, loud drums, and crowds shouting, "Amen," he kept preaching. Tears filled his eyes, but he still believed. People talked about him. Why is he wasting time? He has passion, but no followers. He should learn from Pastor Clement. That one has miracles. But Bartholomew said nothing. He only walked past the big churches with tall walls and cars parked outside. He saw pastors wearing gold watches and Italian shoes. He saw women falling down when those pastors touched them. But Bartholomew only walked by, holding his Bible close. At night, he sat alone under the mango tree, staring at the stars. "God," he whispered, "what am I doing wrong?" No answer came. Only the frogs croaking the bush. Only the wind shaking the leaves like clapping hands that didn't know who they clapped for. He was still just a boy, but he carried hope like a heavy load. He wanted to serve. He wanted to heal. He wanted to be noticed. But every Sunday, the church stayed empty, and the boy named Bartholomew stood alone, speaking to chairs, smiling at nothing, holding on to a faith that felt too heavy for his small heart. Then one day, everything changed. It was a hot Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day when lizards stopped running and the trees stood still. Bartholomew had just finished praying at Mama Agbo's house. He was about to leave when someone shouted from across the road, "Brother Bath, please come quickly." He ran fast, like a boy chasing his own shadow. When he arrived, a small child was lying on a bamboo mat. Her lips were dry. Her chest rose and felt like a weak, tired bellows. "She hasn't eaten in 2 days," the grandmother said, kneeling beside the girl. "I've tried herbs. I've prayed. I even blew into her nose. Nothing." Bartholomew sat beside the child. He touched her head. It was burning hot, like fire trapped under her skin. He closed his eyes, held her hands, and whispered, "Lord, not this one, please." He stayed there quietly for a while. He didn't shout. He didn't wave his arms. He just prayed. Then he stood up slowly and said, "She'll be fine," he said. The grandmother looked at him. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Yes, Mama, God is near." Then he left. The next morning, the woman ran to his church. Her wrapper almost slipped from her shoulder as she shouted, "Brother Bath! Brother Bath!" She stood up. She ate. She even asked for pap this morning. Bartholomew smiled. His eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Lord," he whispered. The woman held his hands tightly. Her hands were rough, like old yam peels. "You're a good boy," she said. But then she looked around at the empty benches and the quiet church. She shook her head. "Bo," she said, "a good heart is not enough." He blinked. "Mama, you want people to come here?" "Yes. Yes, Mama. I just want them to come to know God." She nodded slowly. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. "I know a place deep in the bush, a place where real power lives." Bartholomew looked confused. "What do you mean? Power?" She repeated. "The kind that fills churches. The kind that makes people shout your name. That kind." Bartholomew laughed. "Mama, I just want God's power," he said. She smiled, the kind of smile that hides something. Even God helps those who help themselves. Bartholomew said nothing. He bowed and thanked her. But inside, it felt like something had cracked open. Like a window letting in a strange wind he couldn't understand. That evening, he walked through the town. Near the market, a crusade was going on. A big white tent stood there, with speakers louder than thunder. People were singing, dancing, clapping like there was no sorrow in the world. Then came the miracle. A blind man was led to the altar. The pastor shouted, "Open your eyes." The man screamed, fell to the ground, and got up shouting, "I can see! I can see!" The crowd went wild. Some people rolled on the ground. Others lifted chairs into the air. Phones were raised high. Cameras flashed like lightning. Bartholomew stood at the back, frozen. His hands trembled. His chest felt tight. Nobody had ever shouted for him. No camera had ever turned his way. He walked away slowly, quietly. On his way home, his Bible felt heavier, his legs were weak, and his mind was loud with thoughts. He sat in front of his small church, looked up at the sky, and said nothing. But in his heart, the old woman's words kept whispering, "I know a place." That night, he stood up and went straight to the old woman's house. Bartholomew stood at Mama's gate. His shirt was soaked with sweat. He had left his Bible behind. She opened the door before he even knocked, as if she had been waiting. "I'm ready," he said, his voice shaking. She didn't ask why. She just took her wrapper from the wall, tied it tight, and nodded. "Follow me." They walked, past the last house in the village, past the small stream where frogs sang, past the graves near the old palm tree. The forest swallowed them like hot fufu in a greedy mouth. Crickets sang, owls watched. The path grew narrow, but Mama kept walking, no fear, no words. Then they reached a place where even the air seemed to stop moving. A small clearing, red sand. 7 women stood in a circle, their faces painted white with chalk, like ghosts who remember how to cry. They wore no smiles, no shoes, only black wrappers that touched their toes. In the center of the circle, a clay bowl burned, sending up thick black smoke. The smell was sharp, like burnt hair mixed with old blood. Mama stepped back. One of the women spoke. Her voice was dry, like a broom scraping concrete. "You want power?" Bartholomew swallowed. "Yes." Another woman stepped forward. She had 3 claw-like marks across her cheeks. She opened her hand. Inside was a black ring, smooth, cold, and shiny like oil at night. She held it up. "Wear this. From today, when you touch the sick, they will rise. When you pray, people will fall. When you speak, crowds will gather." Bartholomew looked at the ring, then at the women, then at the smoke. He nodded. She slipped the ring onto his finger. It felt like ice crawling through his veins. Then the oldest woman stepped forward. Her eyes were pure white, no pupils at all. She pointed a long finger at him. "But listen," she said, "power is not free." The others echoed, "Not free." She went on, "Whenever we ask for a sacrifice, you must do it. You must do it alone. No one must ever see you. If anyone does, they must die and be buried right where they fall." Bartholomew blinked. His throat was dry. What kind of sacrifice? He asked again, but they didn't answer. They only turned their backs. The smoke rose higher. The ground rumbled softly. Mama touched his arm. "It is done," she whispered. "Go home." Bartholomew walked back through the dark forest. Every sound felt louder. Every tree seemed to have eyes. When he reached home, he stared at his finger. The black ring shone in the candlelight. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he prayed without saying God's name. The next morning, after the night in the forest, Bartholomew stood once again in his small church. His eyes were red, his voice steady, but his heart beat fast like a talking drum. They carried in an old woman whose legs were stiff like dry wood. They placed her on the last bench. She had not walked in years. Bartholomew touched her head. His hand trembled, and the black ring pressed against her forehead. He whispered, "Rise." The woman opened her eyes. She moved one foot, then the other. Then she stood. "I can walk," she cried. "I can walk." The people outside heard and rushed in like flood water. Voices rose. Hands clapped. And that was how it began. The next Sunday, the church was full. The next Sunday, people stood outside the church holding babies, holding crutches, holding hope. They no longer called him brother. Now he was Pastor Barrow, the boy who made blind eyes see and deaf ears hear. His name spread through the streets. Vendors shouted. By water prayed on by Pastor Barrow. Buses carried his stickers. Phones played his preaching voice. Money began to pour in brown envelopes, checks, and offers. Important men came and knelt before him. Cameras flashed. TV stations called. He no longer wore slippers. Now he wore suits that smelled of power. His shoes now shone like black glass. Then one evening, the old woman returned, the same one who had led him into the bush. She stood at his office door, smiling softly. "You're doing well," she said. "People believe now." Bartholomew looked up, his eyes heavy with both pride and fear. "What do you want?" he asked. She sat down, her fingers tapping on his glass table. "It is time," she said. "Build the real church, the one that will last." Bartholomew blinked. "I already have a building plan. It's starting next month." She nodded. "Good. But before you lay the foundation, you must offer blood." "Blood?" 7 cows. She nodded. "Slaughter them. Let their blood soak the soil. Let their bones be the pillars. Only then will the power remain." Barrow nodded slowly. He did not argue. That night, when the town was asleep, he went alone. The land for the new church was wide, silent, and watching. He brought the cows one by one. No driver, no lights, no songs. Only the moon, only him. He pulled out the knife. The cows cried. He cut. The blood soaked in the ground, running like a red river. Warm, thick, silent. He dug with his hands and buried the heads, the bones, the horns. When he was done, he knelt. "Let this church stand forever," he whispered. The wind clapped around him, not loudly, but just enough to say, "The spirits have heard." The new church rose like a king's palace. Tall walls, bright paint, marble tiles shining like morning dew. A red carpet stretched from the gate to the altar. The sound system was so loud it could wake the dead. People called it Fire Mountain Cathedral. They came from faraway villages and even from other states. People brought their problems, and they left with testimonies. Pastor Barthol no longer walked. Now he rode in black jeeps, escorted by men in suits holding walkie-talkies. Then one sunny morning, his smile looked different. Amaka walked into church beside him. Slim waist, round face, eyes full of peace. They said their vows at the altar. He kissed her gently. People clapped. People cried. Pastor is finally married. Amaka was full of light. She cooked. She shared food. She hugged members like they were family. Children followed her, calling her Mommy Pastor. Then came Muna. Then Favor followed. 2 boys with wide smiles and bright eyes. They played around the mango tree. They laughed like wind chimes in the evening breeze. But power is greedy and spirits never forget a deal. One night, as Bartholomew prayed in his office, a cold wind entered. No door opened, no curtain moved, but he felt it. Then he heard the voice. More, he stood still. The ring on his finger burned. His chest grew tight. Again, the voice said, "Bring more." He nodded. From that day, he followed a new routine. Every time the women came asking for a sacrifice, he waited. He waited until the house was quiet, until Amaka was snoring softly. Muna hugged his teddy. Favor held a biscuit in his sleep. Then Bartholomew would rise quietly. No footsteps, no sound. He dressed in black, carried his tools, and stepped into the night. Behind the church, on the floor beneath the altar, he dug. He poured blood. He whispered the names of the spirits. Each cow fell with a cry. He cut quickly, buried the remains, wiped the ground, cleaned the knife. By morning, no one knew. No one smelled blood. No one heard screams. Only Bartholomew knew, and the spirits. And every time he stood to preach, the crowd shouted, "Power." The miracles kept growing and the money poured in, but under the church, the ground was soaked with blood. Time passed quickly, quietly. Bartholomew's church was no longer just a church. It had become like a city, rows of seats like a sea, voices like a river, miracles like a mountain. He no longer walked into service. Now he entered with trumpets and dancers. They called it the entrance of grace. People fell before he even touched them. Others shouted his name like a song. "Papa, my Papa, man of fire, the one who sees tomorrow." He barely lifted a finger, and blind eyes opened. He laughed, and barren women had children. He whispered, and madness disappeared. Men brought him cars. Women sold their land and gave the money. Even children broke open piggy banks for him. The church was everywhere, on TV, on billboards, on the radio, even in taxis. Drivers played his sermons while stuck in traffic. Pastor Barthol now sat on golden chairs. His suits came from other countries. His perfume smelled like a king's. He hardly touched his Bible anymore. Through everything, Amaka stayed with him. Kind, gentle, always smiling, as if she didn't know what was buried under the altar. Muna and Favor had grown tall, sharp, and smart. They played the keyboard, led prayers, and even copied their father's hand movements. But power is like a hungry lion. It is never satisfied. One rainy evening, Amaka was in the kitchen making okra soup, and the boys were in their room playing games. Bartholomew sat in his office, reading partnership deals, when he heard a knock, a soft knock, the kind that made his skin crawl. He opened the door. There she was, her wrapper darker, her eyes whiter, her voice colder. "You have done well," she said, "but power must grow, and so must your sacrifice." Bartholomew didn't argue. He only nodded slowly. "How many?" he asked. 30, she said. 30 cows. Tonight. Tonight? Yes, before the moon goes down." He stood with his hand on the ring. "I'll do it." That night, he didn't wait. He gave Amaka sleeping pills. He told the boys, "Pray until you sleep." Then he left. Rain still fell softly, like the sky was being washed. He entered the church, locked the doors, lit the candles. 30 cows. One by one, blood poured. The tiles drank. The spirits watched. He wiped sweat from his face. He whispered the names he had been taught. Then he heard it, a creak, soft and slow, behind him. Bartholomew turned, knife in his hand, blood still dripping. Someone was there. Someone was watching. His eyes widened. It was Amaka. She hadn't been able to sleep that night. Something heavy pressed on her chest like a stone. She sat up, touched her head, and whispered, "Maybe water will help." She walked slowly to the kitchen, cup in her hand. But then she heard it. A faint sound from the church, like iron dragging on the floor, like an animal crying softly. She turned toward the hallway, her wrapper brushing her ankles. She stopped at the back door. It was slightly open. She stepped outside barefoot. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still wet. She walked toward the church. The air smelled of rust and smoke. She reached the door and pushed it gently. It creaked. Her eyes looked toward the altar, and she froze. Bartholomew stood still, his hands covered in blood, the floor even bloodier. A dead cow lay at his feet, candles flickering like shadows. Amaka gasped and covered her mouth. "Jesus," she whispered. Barth turned quickly, like a thief caught in the light. His eyes were wide, his chest rising and falling fast. He dropped the knife. "Amaka," his voice shook. What is this?" she asked, trembling. He stepped closer, his hands raised like he was begging. "Please, don't say anything." But Amaka stepped back, her lips trembling, tears streaming down her face. "This is wrong, Bartholo," she cried. "You're killing animals inside God's house." He nodded slowly. "You don't understand." "I'll tell them," she said firmly. "I'll tell everyone what I saw." Bart's knees shook. The ring on his finger felt hot. He whispered, "Amaka, please." But Amaka ran toward the door, fast, her feet pounding like thunder, her wrapper slipping loose. She screamed, "Help! Somebody help!" She reached the big doors and tried to push them open, but Arthur caught up. He grabbed her arm. "Wait, just listen," he begged. She pulled away. "Let go of me." He yanked her back. "No one can know. If they find out, the covenant ends." Amaka shouted louder. "Let me go. You're insane." Arthur covered her mouth with his hand. "Please, please." Amaka kicked and scratched. Her fingers clawed his face. But he didn't stop. Tears ran down his cheeks as he held her. "I'm sorry. I never wanted this," he said. But Amaka kept fighting. Her eyes screamed louder than her voice. Then her body fell, still and lifeless. Barth stepped back, covering his face with his hands. "No, no," he whispered. Then came footsteps, small voices. "Daddy." Muna stood at the door. Behind him was Favor, holding a teddy bear. "What happened to Mommy?" Muna asked. "Why is her face red?" Favor added. Barth turned, tears running down his face. "My boys, go back inside, please." But they stepped closer, and they saw. Muna screamed. Favor dropped the teddy bear. "Don't look." Barth cried. "Close your eyes." But it was too late. They had seen. And the rule was clear, no one must see. Barth stepped toward them, his hands shaking, his feet heavy. "I'm sorry," he whispered. By morning, the sun rose over church. The altar was silent. The floor was clean. No blood, no sound, no laughter. But beneath the ground, 3 new graves lay still. Amaka, Muna, Favor, all buried under the altar. All was sealed in silence. Barth sat alone in the front pew, staring into empty space, whispering endless prayers. Sunday came again. The sky was clear. The churchyard was full. Cars parked, chairs arranged, drums beating. But there was no Amaka at the gate, no Mama chasing lizards, no Favor sitting near the speakers. Mama Chinia was the first to notice. Where's Pastor's wife?" Another woman said, "I haven't seen the boys in 2 weeks." A man near the usher stand asked, "Did they travel?" Then Pastor Bao walked in. White suit, calm face, Bible in one hand. With the other, he waved gently as the crowd clapped. Someone near the front called out, "Daddy, we miss Mommy and the children." Bartholomew smiled gently, but it was only a mask hiding pain. "They traveled," he said, "to her mother's place, just to rest." "Oh," the people nodded. "We hope they're fine." "They are," Barthol replied. No one asked more. No one pressed him. Because miracles were still happening. People were still healed. Babies were still born. Money still came in. And the altar, it looked even brighter now, the tiles spotless. The flowers were fresh, the red carpet thick like royal blood. That morning, Barthol preached as if nothing was missing. He shouted, he danced, he called down fire. But beneath his feet, the ground held a secret. 3 souls buried under the place where he stood to pray. A Maka Muna favor. And the church kept clapping, kept shouting, kept believing, because the lie was easy and the truth was buried. Weeks passed. Sundays came and went. Barthol preached, the crowds cheered, and offerings poured like rivers in the rainy season. But one Tuesday morning, just before midweek service, something changed. A smell, faint at first, a sour whisper in the air. Mama China wrinkled her nose. Something is spoiling. A young usher near the altar sniffed. Maybe something died under the pulpit. Then came the flies. Not many at first, just 3, buzzing slowly near the altar. Then 5, then 10. They landed on the tiles like tiny black dots. That evening, Barthol stood on the pulpit. He noticed the stairs. He noticed the smell. After service, he brought out a fancy spray from Dubai. He sprayed everywhere, lit candles, and burned frankincense. But the smell stayed, like a memory that refused to die. The next day, he told the cleaners, "Clean the altar well. Maybe something spilled." They scrubbed hard, but the smell came back. This time stronger. This time sharper. Someone whispered, "Is something buried here?" Barth heard it. His heart jumped. His hands shook. That night, he stood alone by the pulpit, staring at the floor tiles. His eyes were wide, his mouth dry. Under his breath, he whispered, "Please, don't rise." Samuel was just 24, a youth corps member, tall, brown-skinned, full of dreams, posted to serve at Firemount Cathedral. He cleaned, arranged chairs, typed sermon slides. He prayed often. That Tuesday morning, he came early, Bible in one hand, mop in the other. He started cleaning from the back, then moved to the altar. As he wiped the tiles, he noticed something, a tiny crack near the edge, then like a spider's web. He bent down and touched it. A piece of the tile shifted. He stood quickly, looked around. No one was watching. He crouched again, took a chisel, and tapped gently. More tile broke away. Then a smell hit him. Not normal. Not alive. He gagged and covered his face. But curiosity pulled him back. He dug deeper. Something soft black. He pulled a little hair. Human hair. He dropped it and jumped back. His voice cracked. Jesus. But he couldn't stop. He dug more. Then he saw it. A hand, dark and dry, still wearing a gold ring. Samuel screamed, "Oh my God!" He fell backward, knocking over the bucket. Water splashed across the floor. People outside heard him and ran in. Ushers, cleaners, church workers. Samuel pointed with shaking hands. "There's something under the altar. A body, there's a body." A woman peeked in and fainted. Another ran out shouting, "Call the police! Call the police!" Barthol, who had just stepped into the church from his office, froze when he heard the screams. He saw the crowd gathered. He saw Samuel sitting on the floor, shaking. Their eyes met. Samuel pointed at him. "You knew." The sky over Firemount Cathedral turned gray. The smell had opened a grave, and now the truth was crawling out. The police arrived first, sirens wailing, boots heavy. Then came journalists with cameras and endless questions. They pointed at the altar. "Dig it," the police ordered. Workers brought tools. They struck the tiles. The floor cracked open like dry bread. People gathered, church members, neighbors, strangers, all staring. The cement was broken away. Then the soil. Something soft appeared. A wrapper, a dress, tiny shoes, then a body, then another, then a third. They screamed. One woman fell to her knees. A man shouted, "Jesus, these are children." Someone fainted near the door. The first body was a Maka, her wrapper still tied around her waist. Muna and Favor lay close by, their small hands curled, their eyes shut like they were sleeping in sorrow. The police turned to Barthol. He stood behind them, barefoot, silent. "You're under arrest," they said. He didn't run. He didn't argue. He simply dropped his Bible and cried. They handcuffed him gently. He walked with them like someone already buried. Cameras flashed. People shouted. Others just watched in shock, unable to believe their eyes. He killed them. Our pastor, but he prayed for me last week. At the station, they asked him questions. He answered them all. No lies, no shouting, only tears. In court, the judge rose. The crowd waited, eyes wide, pens ready, mouth silent. Then the verdict came. He was sentenced to life in prison. In his cell, he sat staring through the bars. He never wanted this. All he ever wanted was for God to use him. All he had was faith. But the old woman had opened a door he should never have stepped through. And every night, lie on the cold prison floor, he remembered the truth. It all began the day he stopped believing that prayer was enough. He was a man of God, but power not given by God had buried everything he loved forever.